right. So, let's see if this OBS thing works as it's supposed to. Hopefully we'll get some people to chat with shortly. All right. There we go. Now it's working, I think. All right. Well, it's been some time since we have chatted, Crocoduck Army. Hope all is going well for you. I'm starting a slightly different setup than I had before. I'm actually using my Yeti microphone instead of the bad microphone that comes with the webcam. So hopefully this will sound a lot better than previous streams. With any luck, I'll get a few people in to say hello, and I have some things on my mind, but let's talk about it when you get here. When a few people get here, or say something and we'll talk about whatever you want, because, it's just the way these things go. And I can already see that, okay, so this is wobbling a little bit here. Let me make sure that that does not do that. Okay. So, what's happening? Anything going on? Let's see if I can view the chat here, because I'm gonna take out the chat and one person watching. Okay, so there were a few things that I definitely wanted to talk about in this chat, in this stream, and there were a few things. So quite a few things have happened, obviously, since the last time I streamed. I think my last stream was like 5 months ago or something like that. Something insane like that, like a long time ago. So it has definitely been a while. So during the last stream, I think it might have actually been, I think it was maybe earlier this year. I think it was maybe in the spring or something like that, like 5-6 months ago. But since then, there have been a few things that have happened. So, interestingly, so Colin Powell's death. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. That was a couple weeks ago, but I found it very interesting how people talked about Colin Powell's death. There's definitely a segment of people on the left who have no care whatsoever about how things look, or as you might say, optics, right? So there's a lot to be said for having an awareness of how things come off and whether that's helping people come to your position or not. And I definitely want to make clear that is definitely not something that you want to just always blindly follow and just say, well, it's optics, you want to make sure that people that whatever you say comes off as palatable, because whatever you say also should be truthful. And especially in the realm of political discourse, there are plenty of people who are more than happy to tell outright falsehoods for nothing, So you don't want to be one of those people, but you also want to have in mind that when you say things like Colin Powell murdered 1 million people or something like that, you got to understand that looks insane. Even though you could maybe make the case that, like, okay, there were maybe 1 million people that died in that conflict. Some of those people, and obviously a solid percentage of those people never should have died, and that's certainly a huge tragedy. However, there are also those people are also forgetting that Colin Powell was nowhere near the only person that was saying, like, okay, let's go to war, right? He was not by any stretch the only person that said that we wanted to go to war. That war was going to happen with or without him. And he actually did later say, well, I don't really think that this was, I don't think that was really the right thing to do. He did express regret over it, and to his credit, he at least opposed fascism once Republicans started to trend in that direction in terms of MAGA and everything else. So there's a lot there are, as with anyone with that much power, he definitely was a complicated person. And I'm not at all here defending him, saying like, oh, he's a great person. What I am saying is that if you're going to reduce his entire life down to something like, oh, he's a mass murderer, that I know that in some leftist circles that's going to come across very positively. People are going to be like, yeah, he was a mass murderer, but I don't know. It seems a little clownish to me, but there are certainly segments of the internet that take that to be very normal. Let's say they see it as like, well, this is just how it is, right? And I don't think that's really optimal. But yeah, that was one thing I wanted to mention. I see a few people have wandered in. Feel free to say hello. I'm using this OBS studio thing, and hopefully this is going to show me my comments. But I'm also watching the comments on the stream as well to make sure I don't miss any. It's got this little chat pop out thing. I'm still getting the hang of this. I really would like to stream more often, but I have no idea if anyone's interested in streaming, or if more people are more interested in talking about something else, or doing regular videos like I used to do, and can still do. But first, yes, you, sir, are indeed first. That is correct. So, what is on your mind, by the way? You are a few people. Yes, there are actually 6 people. There are 6 people. So, what's on your mind, Administrator? Anything exciting? I do have some other things I wanted to talk about as well in this stream. The stream's going to last about an hour, plus or minus. And just wanted to kind of get back in the game, see if anyone still even remembers me, for that matter. It's been quite a while. And in internet years, I am very, very... it's been a very, very long time, and I'm definitely very, very late to the party. But that's all right. I have had other things going on in my life, and just just have not done as much for videos. But I do want to do more streaming, because I've watched a lot of other people do it, and it's something that I think I can do. And who knows how much I'm going to be able to do it, but I'm starting to get my setup kind of ramped up for that. That's why I have the regular microphone. Hey, Nix, how's it going? It's been years since I watched you and just happened to wander in after noticing. How are you today? I am doing well, thank you, Nix. I think I remember you, actually. I believe I remember your name. Your screen name. Yep. You have been around for quite a while, I am sure. And I still have like 16,000 some subscribers, but if I were to put out a video today, I'd probably get like a few hundred views, as opposed to in the old days I would be guaranteed at least a few thousand. But that's all right. That's what I get for not being consistent over the last handful of years, just being kind of on and off. So, what's on your mind? I'm concerned that the U.S. is not going to exist about 4 years or so, or whenever next Republicans lose another major election. So, if Republicans lose the next election, then certainly things will be, well, they'll bump along. They'll bump along kind of at least how they are now. I mean, we may or may not be able to make substantive progress. See also Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. So that's going to be a little difficult potentially. But if Republicans gain control, and they gain control of enough state houses, what happens there is then they start. So the places that already have the voter suppression laws of various types, there's just going to be more of that for sure. And there's going to be a ton more of that, and there's going to be a lot of that in states that currently are protected in some ways because they have Democratic governors. So states like Wisconsin, states like Michigan, those kinds of states are currently, they have Republican legislatures, but their governors are Democratic. Same thing with Pennsylvania as well. So those places are being kept in check in terms of the voter suppression laws by a Democratic governor. But if the Democratic governor loses in each of those states in 2 years, that's going to be a serious problem, because there's now going to be voter suppression laws in more states, and especially some of those swing states. In Georgia, it's already enough of a problem because, Democrats barely won Georgia last time, and now they have all these laws in place that have all these voting restrictions. So, yeah. Oh, did we play WoW back in the day? I don't recall. What was your name on WoW? I might remember you, but I wouldn't. I'm trying to connect the administrator name with the WoW name. So, Manchin and Sinema, I want to somehow force them to live on minimum wage and yell bootstraps at them all night and day. Yeah, it's very easy when you make your fortune in the coal industry, and then you're like, well, family leave, I don't know, whatever. Maybe do something different with the employer. Like, I heard that Kirsten Hillebrand went after Manchin to ask him about whether he would support some kind of family leave act, and she basically pretty much hounded him, which was good. I mean, that trying to make sure that she was heard and say, hey, look, this is important to us. We really need to put something like this in the bill, because with all of that stuff stripped out, that's been stripped out. I mean, I'm as conciliatory, or much more conciliatory, than most people on the left in general. I'm usually like, yeah, go ahead and we'll just try to get what we can get for now. And especially in a situation where it's 50 senators, you can't lose one senator. And as Biden said, unfortunately, the guy, well, he was right on this, is that when you got 50 senators, everybody's the president, because everybody, if they don't like what's going on, they can just say, nope, not going to vote for it. And of course, every Republican's not going to vote for it. So that's that's kind of where we're at. Rational 20, hey Zonstar, great to see you. I won't hang out only because I personally don't have patience for live streams. Look forward to every one of your videos. Well, I appreciate it. Well, so here's the thing too, and that's why I'm kind of sort of mixed on whether I want to do live streams, but I don't, doing videos, I don't know, I feel a little bit more drawn to doing live streaming, but videos is how I got that many subscribers in the first place. And so on the one hand, I think there would certainly be some people that might never see much of my content again if I did only live streams. And then there would be some people as well that prefer live streams, that prefer a longer format. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm a little torn on that. But there's also the option, what a lot of streamers do is they take segments that are interesting of their streams, and then they upload them individually. So that's also another option. That's something that certainly could be done. And I don't know for sure whether I'm going to do that or not, but it's at least an option. And at least it would be a situation where, like, if you're interested in a particular topic, you would see that video come up, and then you could just watch that video, as opposed to, like, hanging around the whole stream and listening to the whole thing. So that way you can decide, you know what the topic is before you click on the video. If you don't enjoy live streams, is that something that sounds better to you, more interesting? Is that a thing? What do you think about that? Yeah, your government in the UK, Nix, like, I am puzzled too about how the Tories are so popular in the UK. And interestingly too, I'm learning some about the UK, and I've been to the UK several times. That by no means makes me an expert on the UK, but it does seem strange that the Tories have held on to power for so long. And even in the worst of circumstances, like even by backing Brexit, which has been pretty much a disaster from the beginning, and their handling of COVID, which has not been great. It's been better than the U.S., but not by too much, I don't think. And it's very interesting how even in this last election, like the Tories seem to win really handily, and I'm puzzled. I don't know what it takes. I've never been a huge fan of Jeremy Corbyn. He seems kind of like Bernie but without the charisma, which is like Bernie's best trait, really. So why, or at least like why would you put someone like that in place who's just is very sort of dour and not really it doesn't seem like the best public speaker, and he may have the best grasp on the issues from a left perspective, but it just, yeah. Well, the left is split everywhere, and fortunately or unfortunately, and a lot of times it's unfortunate, but sometimes it's fortunate as well. With a two-party system, you have less split. However, there is also always the danger of some on the left saying, well, I'm not going to vote for the Democrats. I'll vote for someone else who doesn't have a real chance of winning. And yeah, of course, you could always say, well, yeah, sure, you could, if more Democrats voted for them, then yeah, maybe they'd have a chance, and then you could just move them over to the, yeah, but okay. But being realistic, yeah. Another option might be upload the entire live stream and post timestamps for topics. That way you don't waste your time editing. Viewers can go right to the topic that interests them. That's true as well. That's assuming that they're even going to click on that stream at all. I could do both, potentially. I could put up the stream, post timestamps for topics, and then still upload the individual topics as videos as well. So Nick says the left have Labour, SNP, Lib Dems, Greens, Welsh Nationals. Yeah, that's true. They do have a lot of different parties. Even in those parties, though, like, could it be, though, in those parties, like, it's still first past the post voting, right? So, like, yeah, it's totally dominated by the SNP now. Labor can't even get a foothold there anymore. Well, yeah, that's true, because the SNP is definitely left, which I'm aware of. And I wonder, though, in a coalition, though, they would certainly, like, if Labor were able to form a government, SNP would be part of that coalition, potentially, right? Were they in that coalition last time? I would assume that they probably were. Seems like they would have been. And the trouble with that is that, of course, in each of the districts, right, you're going to have a situation where the district is, you're going to say, well, the Lib Dems get 15% and Labor gets 20% and the Greens get 10%, and maybe it's in Scotland, so SNP gets 20%, but then you get the Tories who are going to get 35% or whatever it is. But in first past the post voting, the Tories win, even though all those other parties total have more. So coalition was offered by, declined by the SNP. Okay, so the SNP was offered a coalition when Labor was in power, but the SNP said no. Okay, well, of course, so they didn't probably need their support, though, right? Because if it was a situation where the Tories had just under a majority, Labor had under a majority, and they needed SNP in order to form a government, they probably would have been would have been given some sort of incentive, I would assume. But in this last election, I mean, the Tories did so well that it wouldn't have mattered, right? It just was not going to happen. So, yeah, but I'm hoping that something gives in that situation, but I have no idea if any of that's actually going to happen or not, whether it's going to actually come to fruition. So, I do think too in my my clip. Let's see, I think that I should have probably done a better, like a different different thumbnail for the video, because I think it just came up as the channel thumbnail, and so it doesn't exactly look super dynamic, but maybe the solution is to make some more videos first and then try more live streaming, something like that. I don't know. We'll see. So what else is happening? So to go back to the whole Sinema Manchin thing. So what I don't understand, like, I understand why Manchin is doing what he's doing, and I hate that he's doing it, but at least I get the dynamics in West Virginia. And West Virginia is like an hour and a half drive for me, out west, and like it's very conservative, as everyone pretty much knows. So he's in a situation where if he does go really left at all, he's going to get challenged from the right. And if he was not there at all, we wouldn't even be having this discussion at all. Mitch McConnell would still be in control of the Senate. But because he's the deciding vote, and Sinema is also one of the deciding votes, like, now he gets to be the hero to Republicans and say, well, this is, I'm going to put my foot down and not allow anything good for society to go through, because he just doesn't care. Doesn't care at all. Just is more or less a Republican that's assuming hypothetically at least not fascist, and not or proto-fascist, or whatever you want to call it, and also is at least reasonably liberal on social issues. But that's about as much as you can ask from him, is to be a number to add up to that 50, and then maybe occasionally not block some things. So that's pretty much as good as you can expect. But the thing is, if you have a Republican there, it's going to be worse, because they're they're going to be adding to their number to get to 50, and on top of that, they're never going to vote for you on anything, and they will always try to block everything that Biden or any other Democratic president tries to pass. So then you gotta weigh your options. So getting a primary challenge into Manchin is complete nonsense. There's no good reason to do it. Yes, it would be getting rid of someone who's been annoying and a thorn in your side, but you're going to get someone worse, for sure. But in the case of Kyrsten Sinema, I do not know what her game plan is, because she's in a very different kind of state. She's in a state that's actually much more Democratic than West Virginia. It's about 50-50, whereas West Virginia is very conservative. And Manchin is generally well-liked in the state. He used to be their governor, and he's just a fixture in the state and has been for decades. So enough people can look past the fact that he's in the Democratic Party, and because he's often opposes some things that Democrats want, they'll still vote for him. But Sinema is not in that kind of situation. Sinema only just barely got in the first place, was barely elected in the first place, in a state that's very purple, that's very much split 50-50. I mean, it barely went for Biden this last year. And it is not a situation where you have a lot of wiggle room to get elected, if she can be primaried, that would actually be good. That would actually be a positive. I hope she gets primaried, because in Arizona, someone that is able to win that nomination for the Senate, I think would have a very good chance of winning, because the problem is now Sinema is so disliked among Democrats that I think she's going to have a really hard time getting elected, and that means a Republican will probably win. And so I think to oust her in a primary would be ideal, but that's really, really hard to do in most cases. It's hard to oust someone in a primary. Certainly possible, but could be very difficult. And she was, I don't think she is up next year. I don't think she's up until, I don't think she's up until 2024, I believe. So that's, can't get rid of her yet. But I definitely hope she gets primaried. Needs to happen. Find someone better, please. Someone better than Sinema. So, okay. What else? What else is happening? Anyone else in chat doing anything exciting, interesting? Okay. Yeah, I should probably have put a different thumbnail on this thing. Let's see. Can't manage the broadcast after it's already started, so that's fine. Okay. So, what else? I did also want to talk a bit about COVID stuff. I mean, since I last did a live stream, that was actually about the time, I think, when vaccinations were widely available at that point, and people were getting vaccinated. It was starting to look a lot better. So Garland isn't going to prosecute Trump or his cronies. So a lot of the prosecution administrator of what is going to happen with Trump and his cronies, a lot of that is going to be happening at the state level, not so much at the federal level. And the last I heard, also, there were some documents that the Biden administration, I think the Trump people had said that Biden should block them for executive privilege or something like that, but he obviously declined, which is good. And I don't know necessarily if the federal government's going to do that. What I'm really interested in is the state governments and what's going to happen in New York and other places. The Trump organization. These investigations take a lot of time, a lot more time than I'd like. I'd really like for them to be faster, but they're not. And the quicker they can do it, I think the more forceful it could be. But on the other hand, you want to make sure you get a conviction. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're rushing it and then you end up not being able to get a conviction, or not being able to get whatever, not be able to get the result that you're looking for, just because you're rushing into things. And the same thing with Matt Gaetz, by the way. So think of what's going on with Matt Gaetz at the moment, with all this underage sex thing. So this is dragging out now for a while, and it's been months now since we've known about this, about what he was up to, and he seems to have not a care in the world about any sort of consequences. I'd assume that eventually something will catch up to him, but I don't know. I'm not sure at this point whether it will or not, because he seems like he's just got not a care in the world, goes around with Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Jewish space laser lady, and he seems to be living it up, and no problems. So we'll see what happens there, and yeah, I think that eventually he'll probably be brought to justice, but I really don't know. The longer it drags on, the more I'm starting to doubt it. But again, I do know these things take time, and I want them to be successful rather than be quick. If that's what has to be done, then yeah, I'd rather they be actually quick, or actually successful rather, not actually quick. As quick as you can, but still be successful in prosecuting him. Yeah. Yep. It was interesting too. I saw a video earlier about Christopher Cantwell, one of the Charlottesville people, right? He was the crying Nazi as some called him. He was one of the organizers of that Unite the Right event in Charlottesville in 2017, and he's the one that they had him on camera crying when he found out that he was going to be prosecuted for what he did in that rally. So that is the video was about how he was a big fan of Tucker Carlson, and of course Tucker, being the being the crazy, just out of control right winger that he is, and not even crazy. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's very much he's not an idiot, but he is really he's really going after that market of people who are neo Nazis and all these blood and soil type people, and he's roping them in, and they're definitely lapping up what he's putting out there. So let's see. It is really telling how difficult it is to prosecute those whose crimes are so big and so out in the open and obvious. The U.S. has become a trash hole. Third world country with building codes. Yeah, there are aspects of this country. There are a lot of aspects of this country. Like, I have lost a lot of confidence in this country in the last 5 years or so. I've lost a huge amount of confidence in this country, and there were a lot of things that, like, I thought there's a baseline that I didn't think that we would sink below, but then I'm wrong. Like, there's another level below that, right? There's another level below where I think this is impossible. This can't possibly be this bad. This has got to be something that is not real. It can't get worse than this, but then it does, and the discourse gets worse, and the relative standing of politics in general gets worse. The amount that it's acceptable now to talk about some things related to race and immigration and that kind of thing, like things that would have been inexcusable 5 years ago are now like, well, that kind of sucks. It's the whole, it's the Overton window that people talk about to some extent. It's partly that. So yeah. The administrator says, I used to live in the Philippines. We're the same, just with building codes, 100%. Yeah, I've been to the Philippines as well. It's it's a cool place in some ways, but it's pretty grim in a lot of others. It is definitely. I mean, people talk about unfettered capitalism here. I mean, you multiply it by 2 or 3 times in the Philippines. If you have money, you can continue to get money from the poor mostly. But if you don't have money, it's terrible, and it's very difficult to pull yourself out of that situation. Yeah. Yeah, so all of that is a function of how things have changed in the last 5 years. So Nick says, sadly, these things often take months, if not years, to resolve. Our prince was outed as being friends with Epstein. He's never going to get brought to justice after all. Yeah. Oh, Prince Andrew. Yeah. That guy is a creep and a half, and he should certainly be in jail, but he is certainly not, and probably not going to be. And even the royal family, I believe, uh, said he is. They're not gonna say anything anymore about like what happened. Like they're not going to entertain any press about that, about him. So that is yeah. They're I don't know that they're I'm not sure that they're outright protecting him at this point, but they are in fact protecting him, whether they call it that or not. Um, yeah, they're essentially protecting him so that he doesn't ever face the music for anything that he has done. And yeah, David Arness, I saw that as well. One of your politicians was recently killed, so he's your second MP that's been killed in the last 4 years, something like that. That's pretty scary too. Those sort of things, it's not unheard of here too. I mean, we've had a couple Congress people almost killed in the last several years. Um, Gabby Giffords, for one, who was shot in the head and miraculously survived. And so that's a big that there's a big that was a huge story, of course. And then the other story was Stephen Scalise, who was also shot like at a softball game or something like that, congressional softball game. So there are a couple people who were certainly shot at, but not killed, fortunately. But yeah, you guys have lost two, and neither of those were. I don't even think either of those were guns either that I recall. Yeah, first was Joe Cox. Yeah, 5 years ago. Yeah, yep. Very sad. Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, Gabby Giffords. She seems okay. Like you see interviews with her, and yes, she's obviously affected. She's obviously mentally affected, her speech and stuff like that. I don't get the impression, at least, that she's not pretty much all there mentally otherwise, other than the physical symptoms of speech and all that. Like I think she might be okay otherwise. So I'm not 100% sure whether that's the case or not. I mean, I haven't seen a lot. I haven't read any stories about like how she's doing otherwise. But yeah, it's definitely a bit scary out there. It's this Both were stabbed to death. Preliminary investigation suggests political motivation for David, like with Joe. Yeah, yeah. I had obviously most people had assumed that it's political and not simply striking out at someone who is in power for the sake of them being in power and striking out at them. It was a case where it was probably a specific political beef in terms of their side or some sort of policy that they had put forward. So yeah, that is not great, and I hope that's not a sign of things to come. But yeah, so her mind is still intact, but her Broca's and Wemmick's areas were severely damaged, affecting her speech and comprehension of language. Must be tough. Yeah, I'm sure it is, and yeah, I'm sure that's those two areas. Yeah, you take them out with a bullet. It's going to be difficult to understand things, but yep. Either way, not great. So let's see. What else do we have here? And so there was one other thing I wanted to talk about. So in Virginia, the state I live, we have a governor's race this year because we have this weird like off cycle governor's race, which happens in the year after the presidential election. And here we are. So this is going to be a very, very close race. It's going to be decided in 3 days. So coming up on Tuesday. And it is between Terry McAuliffe, who was the previous governor 2 governors ago, and then also Glenn Youngkin, who is a Trumpite, although he's not like he's playing this game of trying to be very down the middle business conservative, but also playing up his Trump credentials to his base. And because Republicans are now the ones that are activated, they're the ones that are upset about the election results last year, they have the enthusiasm advantage now. And because Manchin and Sinema haven't allowed anything of use to get through the Senate for Biden, then people, of course, are saying, well, the Democrats aren't able to get it done. And they're not, unfortunately. Although there are quite a few on the left, and I see evidence of this all the time. I see people who are more left than I am, straight out leftists. They will say, well, the Democrats have failed and blah blah blah. And of course, they're making it sound like it is all Democrats, where really it's just literally two Democrats that are holding all this up, and the rest of the Democrats are trying to get it passed. But optically, there we are with optics again, it's not going to matter because most people are going to say, well, Democrats have control and they can't do it. So, their enthusiasm is going to be less. They're going to be less likely to go to the polls. That is going to be more likely to then give Republicans control again. And then Republicans may be able to pass things that Democrats don't want passed. So, you used to live in Roanoke as a teenager. Yeah, as a tween. So, Roanoke is a place that is... Now, Roanoke, let's see, that's near the beach, so I forget, that's like southeast. I live nowhere near there, so I don't remember if it's is it that tiny little town that's like near Tennessee, or is it the bigger city that's on the East Coast? Yeah, the Republican Stonewall is still always going to be there, and unfortunately, I think some on the left help play into this sort of reduction of enthusiasm for Democrats, because they'd say, well, Democrats can't do it. They didn't, and then you layer that on top of the conspiracy theories of like, oh, they don't do it because they didn't want it to happen. They see what Hildebrand does and trying to get this passed, and like what Bernie's efforts and everyone else trying to get this done, and they just wave it away, because to some people, like, that's fine if Democrats fail, because they're like, well, maybe that'll open up the door for some kind of further left something, and won't that be great? Well, when you've got voter suppression bills in every single state, it's gonna be hard to ever get back power again. Short of a tsunami of support for the Democratic candidate. So yeah, but it's always two. Glitch 42 says last two were McCaskill and Bill Nelson. Before that was Lieberman. I forget. You can't blame leftists for Democrats don't pass. No, it's not the fault of leftists that like the Democrats haven't been able to pass anything, but also Bill Nelson, I mean, he was, but that's another situation too, where like, so if Bill Nelson were still there now, if he hadn't been narrowly voted out in 2018, um, that that might have led to something that might have been a different dynamic too. I don't know, but when you've got uh, when you've got only you've got just the barest of margins, it's really really tough to get that through. When McCaskill was in, a lot of the time she was in. I don't recall that we had the majority at that point. She lost in like 2014, I believe. So or no, it was McCaskill. Yeah, it was like 2016 or 2018. I think she lost actually. So and that was Missouri. So but yeah, I mean, there are sometimes Democrats who who don't who are more conservative, and the solution to that is to try to get more Democrats in that are not conservative. But you have to work at the primary level and at the national level to try to get at the in the general election to make sure that there are enough of them so it doesn't matter if you lose a couple, because right now at 50-50, like I said earlier, everyone's president, everyone has a veto, and so you reduce the number of people, you increase the number of people that you have, so if you lose a couple, then it's okay, you can still make this happen. And yes, there are always going to be some conservatives, some more conservative Democrats, I should say. So on some issues, it may be difficult to get them passed. But what if we had 52 Democrats in the Senate? We'd probably be talking about a lot different dynamic right now, because you could afford to lose Sinema and Manchin. You'd be okay. But there were some missteps in Maine. We couldn't get rid of Collins, and in North Carolina, couldn't get rid of Tillis, and because the Democrat Cal Cunningham was an idiot, and he sent some text to someone that he shouldn't have, and that that ruined it. So PCMO, you still talk to TJ? Yeah, TJ is still a friend, of course. Yeah. Let's see. Just for a moment, assume Manchin is actually a Republican masquerading as a Democrat. Does it not explain everything about him? Well, it could explain. It wouldn't explain his views on social policies, but on the other hand, he's rarely been in a position where he's needed to where he's been like the necessary vote to make a social policy happen or not happen. So I don't know. I mean, he supposedly had threatened to join Republicans recently, and if he had, that wouldn't have been good either. I wouldn't have wanted that to happen, even though he's a giant pain in the ass and is a huge thorn in everyone's side. But the solution is not to let him go to the Republicans and then give them 51 and give Mitch McConnell the gavel back. That's not useful at all. Like I said, West Virginia is not going to elect any Democrat besides Manchin. But Arizona, on the other hand, can and has and just did last year. So that's where you go after an extra vote, a Democratic vote that you could get that would actually vote for your policies. You get rid of Sinema and then try to add a couple others elsewhere. Try to take a couple seats from Republicans elsewhere. That's how you get enough people to actually get things done and marginalize Manchin and then reduce the number of Sinemas that are there. So, electoralism is not where change really occurs. Like, I still vote, but I pour my energy into church and outside groups rather than door knocking. Yeah, but it's both. There's no such thing as like either or when we're talking about this kind of thing. There is no either or. You do both always. And voting is such the minimal thing that you can do to help. And you can say that it doesn't help, but it does. It has to, because if you get a situation where in order to realistically say that voting doesn't do anything, you'd literally have to think that the people counting the votes are just making up the winner. You're just basically saying that we're a dictatorship already, and we're not. That's ridiculous. As flawed and as many problems as we have in this country, as flawed a system as it is, it's not at that point. And in order to not let it get to that point, you still have to vote smart, do the best you can in the primaries to make sure that somebody that is good, that's both good policy wise and electable, both. They really have to be both, and in most situations there's somebody on the ballot that's both, and then you elect the person that has the best policies and that also has a good chance of winning. So, do I think both bills will pass this week? I don't know. I think one of the bills will pass. I think the infrastructure bill might pass, but I don't know that it passes the House. I think it might pass the Senate. It'll go to the House. The Progressive Caucus in the House might actually nix it, and in most cases, like I said earlier, I generally am in favor of compromise. But in this case, I could not blame them if they said no, this is not enough. There's nothing in here for us, for anyone. There's nothing in here that helps anyone really, and it's not acceptable. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens, and it is one of the relatively rare cases where I don't think I could fault them for it. So one of the main issues from a reform perspective seems to be electoral reform, which would make electing more progressive Democrats easier. Yes, electoral reform is important, but the electoral reform is going to be something that's more on a state level unless we can get the bill passed at the federal level, and Manchin, again, is not supporting that bill. So for now, it's dead, and we have to just take it up when we have more votes. Take it up in places where we have more votes in states, and then take it up at the federal level when we're able to do that. Manchin is a pre-Nixon Republican, in my opinion. Yeah, probably accurate. Democrats don't get elected because of Republican gerrymandering. We've been a large majority for decades. Just how long are we going to keep appeasing Nazis? We don't want to appease Nazis, but the problem is there's so much that is based on gerrymandering in states that it's sort of self-perpetuating when it comes to the states itself. And there are situations where, yeah, we would like to change this or that about voting rights, and there just aren't the votes in states because it's so heavily gerrymandered. Their legislatures are like 2/3 Republican, even in states that are like purple states, like North Carolina. Like North Carolina is heavily Republican in their state houses. Pennsylvania, heavily Republican in the state house, even though Pennsylvania voted for Biden, and North Carolina Biden only lost by like a point and a half there, but because of gerrymandering, the state is firmly in control of Republicans. Now in North Carolina, they actually have a Democratic governor, so that's and in Pennsylvania as well, but Pennsylvania is a state that has gone more Democratic in general over the years. So, but now they're sort of drifting a little bit right. So now that's worrisome, obviously. Hi Zonstar, I've been following you for shit has to be a decade by now. Let's see. Have you ever listened to the band Death Grips? I have never heard of the band Death Grips. It sounds like a metal. It sounds very metal, but I don't know what kind of music it is. But are they good? So Arizona GOP was decided in AZ in 2020. Biden got the endorsement of Jeff Flake, former GOP senator from Arizona, and John McCain's widow. Yes, that's true. John McCain's wife endorsed him. Yeah, and that did help some. And I know how much Arizonans love John McCain. I mean, the company I work for, like most of my colleagues that I work closely with are actually in Arizona. Yeah, I've been to Arizona many, many times. I've been to Arizona like 40 or 50 times in the past 15 years. So, yeah, I'm fairly aware of that. Wisconsin gerrymandering state house is crazy. Let's see. Yeah, America, where politicians pick their voters. Yeah, that's what they do. And some states are different that way. Like there are some states that say like, oh, it has to be done this way or that way, and it's all just a patchwork of state regulations. And it would be great to have a federal I would like to see gerrymandering go away entirely. And a lot of people, at least on paper, want to, but Republicans, of course, will not, because it helps them in most cases. There are cases, of course, where things are gerrymandered in favor of Democrats, but it's by far, if you could do away with it for everyone, I gladly would, and Democrats would certainly come out better for it. And it's not fair, regardless, because as you say, yeah, it's politicians picking their voters, which should not happen. Sinema was elected in 2018 by less than 0.5% in a blue wave year, while a Bernie-style progressive lost on the same ballot for governor by more than 15%. Still a tilt-red state. Yeah, it's probably still tilt-red a bit, but every year, thousands and thousands of Californians move to Arizona. That is pushing Arizona left. It had been a long time. It had been a couple decades, at least, since Arizona had voted for Democrat for president, and even in 2016, it actually went for Hillary more than they had gone for Obama 4 years before. So that's a state that is clearly drifting left. Just a matter of how long it's going to take. PC Mo says, you think there will be much left in the world in 2050 if we don't really get climate change under control? Yes, there will be quite a bit left in the world for us, but for some countries, it already is devastating. And some of those people, like some of those caravans, people talk about the caravans coming north, crossing Mexico, and all of this. There's all this fear mongering about caravans. Half those people are from Central America. Their homes were destroyed by hurricane after hurricane, and they have nowhere else to go. A lot of these people don't want to leave their country. That's where their home is, and their family is, and their way of life, and their language, and everything else. But they're desperate, and they have nothing else. They have nothing else to do, no place else to go. So they head north. That's part of being a climate refugee. I know at least two friends of mine are moving east from the West because they don't see the West as sustainable anymore with the amount of wildfires and the heat and hurricanes and just various places, various issues in the Southeast or the West. And yeah, it's going to continue to get bad and get worse. And yeah, no idea how that is going to end. But speaking of end, I think I am going to wrap this up here. But it was really nice chatting with everyone, and yeah, let's get together again soon, and I'll figure out what my plan is for doing videos / live streams, and see if I can get back into the game a little bit here and talk to people and make my voice heard, scream into the void in some respect. So, but thanks for saying hello, and talk to you guys soon.